Welcome everyone to Discover This. Today we're going to take a little time and we're going to talk about the day that Scott Peterson got arrested. You may remember Scott Peterson, convicted for the murder of his wife and unborn child and sentenced to death, which was then overturned, and he has life in prison without the possibility of parole. So we're going to take you around to some of the sites that were involved in the day he got arrested and just tell that little part of the story. So let's get started.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You may remember the story of Scott and Lacey Peterson from Modesto, California. And Lacey turned up missing. And she was pregnant with their child that they had named Connor. And a lot of searches were done by law enforcement and volunteers. Scott participated in some and didn't participate in others. But there's quite an effort made to try and find her. Scott had been staying with his half-sister Ann Bird in the Bay Area for a matter of days, but then he moved along. He hadn't been seen for a while, at least by law enforcement and the media. Ann Bird had given Scott permission to use her parents' cabin in Lake Arrowhead, California, in the San Bernardino Mountains, and also her parents' house in San Diego. She had given him the keys to both places and told him just to let her know when or if he was going to use one or both of them. Apparently Scott did let her know some of the time and neglected to let her know other times. So this is one of the houses Scott was staying at on La Cresta Drive in San Diego. Belonged to his sister Ann's in-laws. And the law enforcement tracked him here via his cell phone. And so they set up surveillance, and one day Scott came out of the house here and they barely even recognized him. He had dyed his hair blonde, he had grown a mustache and goatee, and then another day he came out and just kind of stood out here and looked around, and then he kind of started walking up and down the neighborhood here and just seeing who was following him. And so he wandered around the blocks, and in the streets behind this house, there's some alleyways, and he would duck into the alleyways and just stand there and wait for somebody to peek around the corner, and when they did, he'd wave at them. So he knew he was being followed. Another thing he did from here is he wouldn't drive his red Mercedes. He would use the Lexus that belonged to the house here. On April 13th, 2003, people walking along the San Francisco Bay near the Richmond Inner Harbor found the decomposing body of a baby. Authorities were notified, and the next day, April 14th, 2003, a female body was found in generally the same area. Modesto detectives drove to the scene. Ann Bird had heard about the discovery of the bodies on the news, and she called Scott and informed him. Authorities were working on getting an arrest warrant for Scott. While still waiting for DNA results, authorities were able to obtain an arrest warrant for Scott Peterson. The plan was to wait to arrest him until after they got the DNA results. On April 18th, 2003, Modesto detectives drove to San Diego to help local agents with the surveillance on Scott. Also in the early morning of April 18th, 2003, authorities had surveilled Scott to an address in Escondido, California, in a gated community. Scott left the residence and agents followed. Scott apparently had a golf date with his father and brothers at Torrey Pines Golf Course in the La Jolla area of San Diego. Scott sped away on the freeway, sometimes reaching 80 miles an hour. Then he would jam on the brakes. Then he would speed up again, then pull over to the right shoulder and park, then take off again. Sometimes he would take an exit and then just get right back on the freeway. Sometimes he would take an exit and continue on surface streets or side roads for a while. Scott called his brother Joe and said he wouldn't be able to make the golf date, that he was being followed. And at some point, Scott Peterson got on Carmel Valley Road here and headed west towards the Pacific Ocean. This is the southern end of Del Mar, the city of Del Mar. And when he got to the Pacific Ocean, he turned left onto South Camino del Mar, which turns into Torrey Pines Road. And unbeknownst to Scott Peterson, this view here was going to be basically his last view of freedom. Once we get past the beach here, the road starts going up the hill towards the Torrey Pines Reserve. The plan was to wait for the DNA results before arresting Scott. However, his erratic driving was making the supervisory agent a little bit nervous, and he didn't want anyone to get hurt, whether it be citizens or Scott or his own agents. And Scott's driving was pretty erratic. Around this area, the supervisory agent decided to make the call and have Scott stopped and arrested. So the agents turned on the red and blue flashing lights, and Scott Peterson exited off Torrey Pines Road and pulled into where the Torrey Pines golf course is, where his brothers were playing golf, or getting ready to play golf. And Scott pulled in here and basically stopped right in this general area right here. And the undercover cars surrounded him. And after Scott Peterson pulled over here, the agents got him out of his car and put him in handcuffs and set him on a curb. And then they started going through his car and searching, starting to take things out. Eventually Scott was put into the back of one of the undercover cars and driven away, while the rest of the agents continued to look through the car and search and gather evidence. While searching the Mercedes, agents found $14,932 in cash, 3 credit cards, 2 in Scott's name and 1 in his half-sister's name, Ann Bird, cold weather jacket, a shovel taken from the Lake Arrowhead cabin, a backpack with a water purifier inside, duct tape, a cooking grill, rain pants, lots of camping gear, most of it still unopened and recently purchased at REI, a camping axe, a snorkel and mask, numerous knives, climbing rope, a fishing rod and reel, 12 pairs of shoes, numerous pants, shirts, socks, underwear, jackets, neckties, sweaters, sleeping pills, Viagra. There were 4 cell phones, a gas credit card in his mother's name, Scott's driver's license, and the driver's license for his brother John. Now individually, some of these things found in the car could be explained away, but collectively, all that stuff didn't look too good. It looked like someone was going to try and disappear or be gone for a while at least. Mexico was very close to where Scott was, but he never drove towards the border. And Scott was brought here to the California Department of Justice office in San Diego. He was placed in a large room, his handcuffs were changed out, and they took his photo, one with his sweater on and one with his sweater off. They asked Scott if he wanted to be booked into San Diego County Jail or waive his right and be booked in Stanislaus County Jail. Scott said he wanted to talk to his attorney. Later that afternoon, after it all got worked out, Scott and the Modesto detectives started making the long drive towards Stanislaus County. On the way, detectives got the word that the DNA results confirmed the bodies found were that of Lacey Peterson and Connor. Here's a photo of Scott Peterson and the detectives arriving at Stanislaus County Jail. Now, some of you may have seen Scott Peterson in the news a little earlier this year. He had been requesting a new trial, so there was a hearing for that, and Scott Peterson did a video conference call with the court from the prison he's at, basically a Zoom type of deal. And this is what Scott Peterson looked like on that date earlier this year. But the Innocence Project has taken up Scott's cause and requested the court authorize them to do or redo a lot of the DNA tests on a lot of the evidence that was found or gathered over the course of time. The judge denied most of those requests, but not all of them. So remains to be seen how that's going to play out. But that's still happening. He still has some court things going on as far as the DNA results and trying to get a new trial. So that's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, for this story about Scott Peterson and the day he was arrested and a couple of the days leading up to his arrest. Appreciate you taking the time to watch. Again, Scott Peterson's been in the news fairly recently and will probably be in the news for a little bit of time to come with the Innocence Project trying to further his cause of trying to get a new trial. Another thing that's happening is Netflix has a new documentary coming out called American Murder, Lacey Peterson, and that's coming out very, very soon, and tells this story of Scott and Lacey Peterson and her going missing and her body being found and Connor's body being found and the trial and Scott being found guilty and all that kind of stuff. So you can check that out. Please take some time and check out our other videos. And for now, thanks for watching Discover This, and we will see you next time.